Woodlawn children looked at each other with startled faces. "Our father was born in England, you know," said Caddie slowly, "but I can't guess who would be writing him from there." Tom came back from putting up the horses, and they all sat down around the doorstep, unable to take up their play again where they had left it. Only Cousin Annabel seemed unaffected by Father's strangeness. Having thought of England, her cultivated voice rambled on in praise of Boston and England. According to Annabel, England was very nearly as well civilized and delightful as Boston, and if she were not fortunate enough to marry a Boston clergyman, she thought that an English lord would perhaps do just as well. "Children," they turned to see Mother standing behind them in the doorway. Her cheeks were flushed and her eyes bright. "Children, your father wishes to speak to you in the parlor. Annabel dear, don't you want to run to the spring and get yourself a cool drink? The children will be out again in a moment." "Us in the parlor?" whispered Warren. "Golly, he must have something to say." Yes, he had. Father sat behind a little table on which she was spread the open letter which had come across the sea. His face was very grave. "Children," he said, "we have come to crossroads in our lives. Today I have received a letter from a source which I had thought closed to me. Once this letter could have meant a great deal to me, but now it has come almost too late." "Oh, no, Johnnies," cried Mother quickly. "Perhaps Mother is right," he went on. "The letter can still do much for us if we wish it. Children, an uncle, whom I have never seen, has died in England. He was Lord Woodlawn, after my grandfather. Since his death it appears that the family lawyers have spent some time in tracing his successor. At last they have found him. He turns out to be the son of the little seamstress, a boy who used to dance in her red breeches and clogs to keep from going hungry. It seems, however, oddly, that I may be the next Lord Woodlawn." "You, Father?" children cried, and they clasped her hands and said, "Oh, the big house with the peacocks, Father. Will it be yours?" "Yes, the big house with the peacocks, Clara," said Father slowly. Caddie thought of the big house with the peacocks too, and she tried to see in her mind just how it looked, but try as she would to see it clearly, the iron bars of a closed gate were always between, just as they had been when Father had first described it. "There is one condition, however," continued Father, "which I must tell you about. Title and estates in England will come to me only if I will give up my American citizenship and all my American connections and return to England to live. This requirement was a part of the late Lord Woodlawn's will, and if I do not wish to comply with it, the land and title will pass on to another, more distant relative who is living now in England." "But of course you will," said Mother and Clara together. "I suppose it would be foolish not to," said Father slowly, and he passed his hand across his forehead as though he were brushing away a cobweb or an unruly bit of hair. Then he folded the letter and put it back into the envelope and stood up, smiling. "In any case, our decision must not be hasty," he said. "We must be sure that we are right." "But it seems to me, in a case like that there can be only one right thing to do," cried Mother warmly. Father laid his hand on her arm and looked deeply into her eyes. "Think, Harriet, think before you speak," he said. "Couldn't we ever come back here to the farm?" asked Tom. "No, Tom. Who'd see the mill at Galley? They'd get another man. The machinery is all installed. Anyone else could keep it in order." "Would we have to leave Betsy and the animals?" asked Caddie. "Yes, Caddie. Probably there would be many fine horses awaiting us in England." Then another thought occurred to Caddie. "Father, how soon would we have to go? Would it be before John could come back for his dog and scalp belt?" "Yes, Caddie, I think it would. If we go, it will be soon." "If!" cried Clara. "Father, how can you say that 'if' to such a splendid thing? It is only right to look at all the sides of an important question, Clara." When they came out into the sunshine, they were a little dazzled. The parlor had been dark and cool, and in a few moments they had stood there in dark coolness. The whole future had suddenly changed for the little Woodlawns. How strange, how unbelievable it was! No wonder they blinked at the sun when they came out. But suddenly Tom saw something which brought him out of the daze. Hetty was setting off across the field toward Maggie Bunn's. "Bring her back!" yelled Tom, and Caddie Warren raced along with him to catch her. They weren't long in overtaking her, and Tom said fiercely, "You hold your tongue, Hetty. Don't you go telling anyone we're English until you're good and sure." "English," said Hetty, "but we aren't English, Tom. We will be if we go back there. Didn't you know that, you silly?" You little silly. Hetty stopped, struggling to be free, and looked earnestly from one face to another. Will we? I thought we'd always be Americans. Then I guess I don't want to tell after all, she said, and the four of them went silent back to the house together. That evening at supper, Annabel, Clara, and Mother did most of the talking. Annabel particularly was full of most delightful plans for their life in England. Of course you shall be presented to the Queen, she said, and there will be balls and concerts and all manner of elegant things. Just think of the splendid clothes you can wear, the very latest fashions, and more buttons than anyone else in London if you like, and no sheep to eat them off, and all the handsome noblemen simply languishing for dances with you. Oh, I do so envy you, you lucky girls. I do hope you will have me to visit you in England. Perhaps I shall change my mind about Boston clergymen, after all, and have the English lord for the first choice. Wasn't it funny that I should have said that this very afternoon, and all the time Uncle John already knew it was to be one. Fancy an English lord coming to Donville. Was ever anything more absurd? Father said very little, and once when Caddie glanced at him she caught a troubled look in his eyes. It made the uncomfortable little ache in her own heart sharper. It's page 250.